That was my first marriage. Completely lost my identity, doing everything for everybody else. But usually the person that gives the most gets forgotten. When I bought my house at 21 years old. So I had started building my credit when I was 18. And I did everything I was supposed to. And through the process, I came into an issue where they said, oh, you're supposed to have X amount of money left over after spending, and you're short. I think I was short maybe like $40. I had no clue. I could tell they were trying to lean more towards, oh, she's young.
Hi, Adriana. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspectives, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I must start out by asking you, what does peak performance mean to you?
I would have to say it means perseverance, mainly because of every category you just listed. You have to have some perseverance and resilience to excel in those areas.
Perseverance and resilience are two wonderful traits, but they have
Mhm.
also become cliched and watered down, just like
True.
the word love,
Mm.
right? What does perseverance and resilience mean to you?
It means having the ability to continue going after that goal, regardless of what's in front of you, regardless of what's being said to you. Having something so deep within you that you just need to excel and exceed.
Can you give an example from your life where there was a big obstacle in front of you and the narrative that was presented to you was different, but you just needed to get past it?
Absolutely. The first thing that comes to my mind is when I bought my house at 21 years old. So I had started building my credit when I was 18, and I worked as a dispatcher for the Georgia State Patrol. I had been doing what I thought was the best when it came to financial literacy. And the only reason I considered buying a house was because the rent of my apartment was starting to go up. And I was like, no, I want to have a sustainable life. So I need to figure out what I want to do. And I did everything I was supposed to. And through the process, I came into an issue where they said something like the mortgage, I don't know if it was a mortgage lender or someone a part of the bank or somewhere said, oh, you're supposed to have X amount of money left over after spending, and you're short. I think I was short maybe like $40. I had no clue that was a thing. I think that week I spent money on McDonald's, Taco Bell, all time. I was like, wait. And I had just refinanced my car. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. Like, I just made so many decisions where I could tell they were trying to lean more towards, oh, she's young. Like, maybe when she gets a little older, maybe not right now. But I kept telling them, and even with the interest rates, they were trying to give me a 4.5. And at 21 years old, I guess most 21-year-olds don't know what interest rates are. But I told them my credit score is a 720. Why am I getting the same interest rates as if my credit score was lower than that? I want something lower. And they were like, oh my God, she's not playing. I'm like, I can refund the Taco Bell, I can refund the McDonald's, but I want this house. And I got it.
Is in you that makes you say, I know you're saying this thing, but I want to do this instead?
That's a question my mom and husband have asked me. Honestly, it has to be some type of hunger. I don't know what it is, but it's this feeling of rules don't apply to me. I can get what it is that I say that I want because I said so.
This is a superpower because so many people go through life just doing what they're told to do by their
Hmm.
parents, by society, by school, by their spouses. Almost sometimes I meet people and they don't have an inner voice, like a real voice of their own. So if someone is listening to this and thinking, my gosh, Adrian is so different. I wish I was like her. What are a couple of things you would tell them they could do today to get better?
I think the most important thing I could say is to trust yourself. I think we struggle with following our own intuition. Men and women both have their own intuition, but sometimes it gets clouded with other voices and beliefs that we might have, and we're not even sure where they come from. So I would challenge them to truly trust their inner voice because we have it. We have that feeling or that thing that comes up when we're in an environment that may feel unsafe or when we're around someone and we don't know what it is, but something feels a little bit off, or when we're trying to go for that opportunity, but it doesn't feel like it might be right. I would challenge them to listen to yourself and don't second guess yourself.
But what happens when you've been living your entire life so that you're needing to seek permissions from others? So many of us have grown up in families. Don't do that. You're not good at that. You're never going to be good at that. I can't believe you're doing it. Don't do it on your own. You're going to screw it up. And then they grow up and they get into relationships where now they're dominated by a partner. This muscle of
Hmm.
listening to yourself They don't even have that. They just by default look to others to say, what do I do? So, how does a person like that even begin this process?
That starts with reprogramming your mind. And I believe what's worked for me and what's worked for some of the women that I coach is getting them to answer the question why behind every single thing that they do. Is it because someone told you to, or is it because you understand the reasons why? There is a very short story my mom told me about a woman who was married that she would always cut like the butt of a turkey and put it in the oven. And her husband would ask her, "Why do you do that? Why do you do that?" She's like, "I don't know. My mom did it all the time. My mom did it. Why are you tripping? This is normal." And then one day she asked her mom, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Because we just didn't have a big enough oven. So I had to cut it off. It's not that it's normal. It's just because of our circumstances. That's what I had to do." But if she would have never asked her mother why, she would have just been cutting off the butt of a turkey for no reason. So sometimes I agree. We go through life and we do things because we feel like we're supposed to. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why do I talk like this? Why am I more pessimistic than I am optimistic? Why do I feel the need to do this instead of that? What is it? And honestly, it sounds cliche, but journaling helps a lot with that because it puts your words onto paper and allows you to reflect on and then you really do begin to think and wonder, I don't know, but I need to figure out why.
Asking the why, writing down these things are extremely valuable. But it's like playing with a gun because a lot of times you need to know what to do with those questions. Because if someone writes down why, they're like, I don't know, I guess this is who I am. And then you just keep writing all these things about that you don't like about yourself. Yes, this is just who I am. And you almost inevitably end into this false belief system. I guess I'm never going to change because this is just who I am and I'm doomed to suck. So, what is the next step after you have written down the why? How do I take this forward?
So the next step would be continuing to unravel. It doesn't stop. Even when you feel like you know yourself, it doesn't stop. So you question the why. And if you say, I don't really know why, this is just the family that I grew up in. Okay, so then what is the family like that you grew up in? How would you describe that? What did you see? What do you remember? What did you take from them? What part of how you are is from them versus because of your own interests? You have to go to the root. It's never ending, but you have to keep going. And you can't say things like, I don't know, or I'm not sure. This just seems like this. You have to take yourself seriously. And it's almost like acting as if you're in a therapy session because that's what they ask you to do as well. But you can do this yourself with challenging the way that you view this whole process, but you can't shortchange yourself. You have to take it seriously. You have to go to that next thing. Okay, I'm like this because my mom said that I won't amount to anything. Why did my mom say that? What kind of house did she grow up in? What was she accustomed to? And what did she mean by that? Is she saying that because it was said to her, or is she saying that because she believes that with me? Some things you can even inquire with that other person, especially if it stems from in your family, but you have to go so much deeper than just why do I like the color pink? It's no, how come my whole house is decorated the way it is and it's the only thing that makes me feel safe? What is it about pink that makes me feel warm and fuzzy that blue doesn't? What do I associate with blue? What's the problem? Why don't I like to eat watermelon, but I can drink it if it's a juice? There's depth. There's so much depth beyond just looking at one thing and saying, I don't know, I guess this is just normal.
What role does one's association with their identity that they have created for themselves play in this? Because for a lot of people, we want to stick to the identity we
Mm-hmm.
have, right? So when you meet someone who's just in this belief system, who doesn't have the curious mind like you're showing us we need to have, how do you work with someone who's just this become part of their identity? They don't want to leave it.
Yeah, I've had that happen with a client. Honestly, most of my high achieving women are like that because they believe so much in their success that they're not sure they are anything outside of it. And even I struggled with that myself, thinking I bought a house, I did these things, like I can't be the problem when it comes to certain things. I'm amazing. And when I met with clients that are like that, I go to the all the way to the beginning, and most of the time they're like, I don't have any trauma issues, I'm fine, it's not a problem. And I'm like, okay, sure, maybe it's not trauma, it doesn't have to be trauma, but I'm trying to understand why you think you have to be the most reliable person in your family. Where does that even come from? I have to understand, why do you think that because you make six figures that you're incapable of being someone who balances a successful relationship as well? Did you not see it? What is that? So I have to challenge challenge them. And it's frustrating for them because they're like, I know who I am. I know this about myself. But I'll ask them, okay, cool. So then tell me why. What made you become a lawyer? Is it because your parents told you to, or did you have an interest? What is it? You should be able to tell me these things since this is just who you are. And when they say things to me, it's just because everyone in my family has done this. And then I'll ask them, okay, so if in a perfect world, if you could choose what you would want to do, take a second, and it usually takes a long second, to think about what would you do if you had a choice or you felt like you had a choice. Would it be what you're doing now? I truly go back and forth with them. And I think sometimes if you don't have a curious mind yourself, it's so important to surround yourself with people who challenge you, because you will be in a bubble and not realize it because you're in a comfortable bubble. But having people that inquire and they care beyond what you can do for them, I think is extremely important.
You are the creator of the famous Phoenix coaching method.
Yes.
You help women go through changes in their life that makes them attract and maintain healthy relationships.
Yes.
What was the turning point in your life that made you decide that this needs to be done?
It was my divorce. So, my divorce taught me a lot and it showed me a lot about myself. And it made me realize that I was using all of the things, all the components that made me a good leader, made me a woman who was very accomplished, as the same pieces for a relationship. And although I should have never been married to him in the first place, it showed up even more on why I was doing things that was never going to work, even with the type of guy that I said I wanted. So I really had to sit back and think about, how did we get here? I was with him for 4 years, married for two. So, what is it? What is the cause of it ending so quickly, or me feeling like this just was a horrible relationship? And a lot of it had to do with me. A lot of it had to do with what I valued in a relationship, or what I valued from the perspective of just being a good woman, and not being able to understand what that could look like from someone else's eyes. So that for me truly was like a mirror. And I was able to be honest and reflect on, okay, these are the things that I think had a huge impact on us getting to this point. If I feel that I'm as perfect as I say that I am, would this work with someone else? And my answer was no, it wouldn't. And I had to ask myself again, why? And it's because I could finally see how I could be coming off to someone else, regardless of what my intentions were. So I help women take a step back. And it's like when you watch movies and they're outside of their body and they're looking down on themselves. I help them do that and reflect on, hey, is this what you want to be? And a lot of times, even for myself, the answer was no. But the environment that we're in and the decisions that we make play a huge role in what we end up dealing with in those relationships, too.
Give us an example of what was happening in that relationship of yours. And when you took a step back and you realized, it's really me. What was that realization?
For me, the realization was, as much as I thought I was being inspiring and encouraging, I was being belittling. And I had to flat out ask my ex at this point, hey, do you feel that I kick you when you're down? Because I just couldn't understand why there was such a disconnect in moments where I thought I was pouring into him and I thought I was encouraging. And he told me yes.
Can you give me an example?
I think there are moments where, again, to me, I didn't think that this was what it was, but I could see how it could come off that way. So there are moments where he would stay in bed all day, all the time. And again, this is the version of me who just accomplished all the things. And I remember telling him, millionaires don't stay in bed past 12. Why are you lounging around here? What are you doing? And I didn't mean it to be demeaning, but I can absolutely see how, let's say this person is working hard, or they feel like they're working hard and they're just trying to rest. They're trying to catch a break and there's somebody just in their ear. Oh, you can rest when you're dead. Even the mentality of me having that, it was horrible because I used to believe that. Rest. What's that? Sleep. We'll do that later. And it's so toxic.
So now, when you work with women, what is the most women who are executive, women who are accomplished, women who have a career, right? What is the most common problem they come to you with?
Vulnerability. They struggle to balance leading at work and loving at home. It's a struggle because they think it's the same. And I have to tell them, you may have to be a certain way at work so that you're taken seriously as a woman, so that you have that authority and presence where need be. But that is not the same formula that makes you come off as a lover. at home. And they struggle with feeling like, I don't understand why I have to be his mom or be submissive or be vulnerable and talk about my feelings all the time when there's more to life than just feelings. I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to build. And I end up having to tell them every single time that you can't approach somebody the same way that you approach someone that you're about to have a meeting with, not someone you love. It just doesn't work that way. I didn't make the rules. But if you have it in you to tone it down and be vulnerable with your kids, why can't you do it with your husband or your partner? What's the disconnect? And they are always surprised by that question. And I'll tell them it's not that you don't have it in you. You don't value the relationship the same way that you value other things, maybe because you don't know how. And they associate vulnerability with weakness, as a lot of us do, because we've seen what happens when you're vulnerable with the wrong people. But I'll tell them you have to use your discernment to be vulnerable with the right person so that it doesn't feel like a weakness.
Challenge of balancing out the masculine energy needed to do certain things and the feminine energy needed to do certain things is a big challenge, right?
Yes.
I would assume that majority of the women you're working with have been conditioned to be living and thinking a certain way for many
Yes.
years. And while they are intellectually understanding what you're saying, it might be difficult for them to emotionally accept it, furthermore, know what to do about it.
Yep.
So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, that's me, how do you even get started with bringing that feminine energy out? Because it just feels like that's not who I am.
So I'll give an example with a client that I have. She is very smart and she has accomplished a lot. She has a son as well. She's divorced. And my goal is to help her use that divorce as a blueprint so that she can have better relationships. And she was talking to me on camera, like you and I are talking, and it was unrelated to anything serious, but her tone was so hard. And I think she was talking about something happy. So I stopped her and I said, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Why are you talking like this?" She was talking like, "What?" I was like, "If you're not aware of how you're coming off to me as someone who makes you feel vulnerable and safe, I can imagine how you might come off to the world or your man when you have one." So then I said to her, she was like, "I don't understand. I said, "Okay, do me a favor." I asked her, "What's your son's name?" And she told me. I said, "For 5 minutes, I want you to talk to me like you're talking to your son." And her tone completely changed. And I was like, "Can you smile a little bit while you talk to me too?" And she was like, I said, "Just do it. Just smile a little bit. Just, you don't need a reason to smile." She was like, "Oh," I said, "So smile talking to me about your son." And I was like, wow, these are two completely different versions of you. And we're not talking about anything severe. And I said to her, if I had just met you and I was in your workspace, I wouldn't even look your way because I would be scared to talk to you because your disposition is not welcoming. It's not warm. It's not friendly. But when you think about something that makes you happy, that changes. And then I asked her, what is it that keeps you from carrying this disposition majority of the time? If you feel like you're generally a happy person, why do you operate in the other side where it's so stoic, so serious? What is that? And she was like, "I don't know. I've just always been that way." And I was like, the fact that there's a difference when I'm mentioning your son versus when you're just talking to me about life means that there's some type of disconnect within you and you're not paying attention to it. So I told her, I want you to even practice walking by the mirror and checking to see what your face looks like. And she laughed. And I told her, this is something I had to do for myself too, because my face when I'm just thinking was like I wanted to murder someone and I didn't know why. And I was like, I don't know why I look like that. So I challenged her to just be self aware, how you sit, how you stand, your body language, and truly just assess that of yourself. I think I told her for a week. And luckily she did it. She listened and she was like, wow, okay. I've had people come to work and actually talk to me now. And they told me we weren't sure if we could because you seemed like you were always just in your head or ready to go. And I was like, can you imagine what a man thinks? My goodness. Can you imagine? Oh, my Lord.
I have a similar problem. People watch my podcast and they always say, "Why are you looking so angry all the time?" Because I furrow my brows and I'm just trying to understand. And no, I'm just trying to understand what she's saying.
Right.
I'm focusing. It does look like I'm mad at her. I'm like, so I get it. Now I need to start doing more smiling. My podcast. Your life is a testament to two things. Number one, realizing things are not going the way I want them to be. And then coming up with an action plan to be able to rebuild yourself out of it.
Yes.
So many people have difficulty doing that because it's not just happening to them in relationships. It's also happening to them in life in general, right? We're all living some type of a trauma that we have lived out in the past. And even though the event has happened, the effects of it lingers with us, and it
Yes.
makes us question everything we do from here on out. So what are some actionable steps that you would say you have for your clients that help them rebuild that life and moreover that self-confidence after a significant setback, and let's just say divorce in this example?
The first thing I tell my clients is to give themselves some grace. And we hear people talk about grace all the time. And I don't think we take it serious, because giving yourself grace is allowing yourself to have made whatever decision you made and not be your worst critic about that decision. I think that when you're in a position to where you can say, okay, I messed up. I know that I shouldn't have done that. That was, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was doing. When you're able to be really honest and again, vulnerable with yourself, you can give yourself grace and let the pressure go. From there, I think that you must be intentional about whatever it is that you say you want your life to look like, whether it's in your career, your relationship, your family, whatever that is. You have to have an idea of, okay, so what do I want? I can understand all of the clients that I've had where they're like, I don't know, but I just want it to be better. And I'm like, what does that look like? You have to be very specific, because I was not able to transform being vague. It doesn't work like that. I had to almost become delusional about the life that I wanted so that I could have some type of blueprint or path or something that could keep me in alignment with making the proper decisions to get to that end goal. So I would suggest them to first release the burden of whatever it is that you did. Because I believe, and maybe I'm crazy, but I believe that anything is fixable. I really do. And I was someone that was uncertain of what my life was going to look like after being divorced and having 3 kids. I had no clue what to expect, but I knew what I deserved because I started to learn myself. So that is the biggest thing that I would advise them. It doesn't matter if it's a divorce, it doesn't matter if it's losing a job, whatever the thing is for you, figure out, what do I want now that I have accepted that I've already made this decision. And I'm not saying that those feelings are just going to go away overnight, but you don't have to beat yourself up over something you've accepted. You have permission. Give yourself permission to move forward, because we'll just die into this dark hole if we don't. And we don't want that. We have so much more life to live. But what does that life look like? Having an idea also lets you know what type of company you should and should not keep, what type of decisions you can and cannot make. Because after you go through a divorce, you don't have a lot of room for trial and error. You have to be intentional about everything because you've already given your life and time to someone else. So all of the willy nilly and just going with the flow, we can't do that anymore. Now is a time for intention.
What about someone who was a victim of a toxic relationship? And instead of being in a mind space where they are thinking, oh, I need to show myself grace because I think I did something wrong, they're in a different mindset where they feel that things were done to them. How do they go about rebuilding their life?
So I also have a client that's dealt with that as well. And it was a lot of traumatic things. I had her understand, again, you cannot accept the actions that someone did to you. You can only worry about the things you have control over. This is not a thing that was your fault. There is no reason to take blame for someone else's actions at all. You have to let that go. You cannot say, I should have done this, I should have left earlier, or maybe if I would have done this, because it doesn't work that way. When you're a victim of something like that, you have to understand that you're a victim, and you have to be able to say, you know what? This person did these things to me, but do I want to let this be the end all be all of my story? Because you don't have to. And I've dealt with people who've been raped, molested, and so on. And it's difficult. I've dealt with molestation myself as a young child. So I understand how difficult certain things can be when you're trying to move on from something that it wasn't your fault. But I always also look at that as, do I want this situation to win? Do I want this person to win over my life? Do I want them to have the ability to hold me emotionally hostage? And the answer is no. No one should be held emotionally hostage from something that someone did to them because it wasn't their fault.
Let's talk about emotional triggers. We don't wake up and choose to be fearful. Things happen and it scares us. It brings back memories. What advice do you have for people who are navigating emotional triggers that arise from a bad relationship, a breakup, a divorce, or a toxic relationship.
Man, I dealt with that myself personally. I would tell them it's so normal. It's absolutely normal. And the only way to work through those triggers is to almost test yourself. When it comes to relationships, no matter how much counseling or how many therapists you have, the only true test to a relationship is you interacting with someone that you're considering being in a relationship with, because certain triggers don't show up until you're emotionally invested. So then the challenge becomes, how am I going to respond? I'm not going to lie, in my current marriage, I failed tremendously in the beginning of this because it was very difficult. So many things gave me PTSD from my failed marriage. And I had to apologize many times to my now husband when he would explain to me that was not my intention. That's not what I was saying. That's not what I meant. And I had to keep going scared. I had to keep trying scared. And I had to try my best to be aware in those moments. It's not the easiest thing to do. And again, it's absolutely normal. No one is saying that you're supposed to have this thing in the back of your mind the whole time that's, oh, go left, not right, do this, not that. But you can practice paying attention again to how you feel when certain things come up and saying to yourself, you know what, this reminds me of this, of X, but I know that it's Y. So let me try to do something different than I would typically do, even though I'm terrified of the possibility of it being exactly like what I've seen before. And women who've gone through divorce deal with this so much. And it's honestly, I believe, what causes us to not get married again, because we can't handle going through something just like a previous relationship ever again. But those who do try again and they do it scared, they end up seeing how something could look so similar to the past, but that small difference makes the biggest change or biggest difference of them all. You have to do it scared.
It's a difficult decision if you have to decide, should I leave this person or not?
Yes.
Because there's so many consequences to that. If there are children involved, even worse. But once you have made the decision to leave that person, there's a sense of relief.
Yeah.
And over time, that relief increases as time goes. In contrary, if you're in a relationship where it's not too bad to leave, but also not too good to stay, in those relationships, just learning how to get through day by day is exhausting, especially if you have a partner who just simply doesn't even understand what they're doing. How does one start the process of forgiving such a partner, especially?
While they're still in the relationship? Okay. I would actually challenge that person to have a conversation with the person they're in a relationship with. Now, it's true that partner may or may not be sorry because they may or may not understand what you're complaining about. But I do believe if you decide to stay, it's your job to do the best that you can to relay what problems you might be having. And that starts with you understanding yourself what it is that you don't like that they do, or how you took something that they said. And in order for them to understand what that meant to you or what that made you feel like, you need to know this first. You also need to know why. There have been many times I have felt offended or slighted by my husband, and I had to think about why. And I just knew that, oh my God, he did this, and I can't, but he's probably never going to apologize because he's so stubborn and he doesn't even know. And then I had to think about, or did I take that the wrong way? Is this something that makes me feel the way that I do because of something else? Or is this something that makes me feel the way I do because of him? I really need to know before I present this to him, because he's going to ask, why'd you take it like that? Or what made you think this? Or I thought you would know I would never do this to you. So to eliminate all of that, if you truly believe that this person has done something to me and I want him to apologize, he probably will not, but I want to stay in the relationship, you can't be silent. This is something that you're going to have to do with this person, but after you do it for yourself. And again, cliche, but write this stuff down. Write it down. What offended me? What made me feel this way about him? What about what he said made me feel this way? So that you can then present it to him and you can be certain about where you stand. Because in moments like that, you want to be confident and not emotional about, hey, I really didn't like X, Y, and Z. I understand that you may or may not feel that you did this, but this is how I took this. And I don't, in order for us to stay together, this has to stop. If you can't come up with that without him, it's not gonna come out the way you wanted to when you present it to him, because it needs to be presented to him or her. I've had men talk to me about things that their wives or girlfriends have done. And I've also had to talk to them about how to approach them to express themselves. But I would never suggest anyone to keep silent and just forgive and just keep moving on. You have to speak up for yourself.
How does that change when it's a former partner that you've been having trouble forgiving, but you just need to forgive this person, even though they're not apologizing, so that you could just move on?
That's a really good question. I've talked a lot to women about being able to move on without the apology because when you don't, that is what keeps you emotionally hostage. And an example I love to use is, can you imagine waiting for someone to apologize for something that they did intentionally? You would be waiting forever. Or something that they don't care that they did because they felt justified. An apology, you waiting for an apology means that you have hope that this person is aware enough to either care about what they did to you or care about you. Once you understand that, okay, this person doesn't really fit the qualifications for either, you can say, you know what? I know who I'm dealing with. I don't have unrealistic expectations. I'm aware of the type of person they are. So, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to forgive myself for dealing with this BS, dealing with this craziness, because I know better. Maybe I should have done this or maybe I should have done that. It doesn't matter. What I do know is I deserve more and I refuse to let this happen to me again. So I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go and I'm not allowing whatever version I was back then to resurface as the woman that I am today because they're two completely different people. And I'm letting that experience go.
Almost forgiving someone else has to start with self forgiveness.
Yes, that's how it goes.
You're a mother, you're a businesswoman, a
Mhm.
go getter businesswoman, you're also a wife. A lot of women struggle with maintaining all these hats. And sometimes when they're not doing enough in their business, they feel stressed. If they're paying too much attention to the business, they feel guilty. I'm not with my kids. If I'm paying too much attention to my kids, I just talked to Adriana and she said that I need to be more feminine with my husband. I'm not doing that. And for some of them, it's hard. And they're living in this constant stress and anxiety of, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? Am I pouring myself into where I need to be pouring? What things do you do in life so you could have better balance so that you're going through your day guilt free, feeling good, feeling free, doing the best you can in all those areas?
I am selfish. Very unpopular opinion, but I put myself before everybody else because I'm aware that I run the show. My husband needs me, my kids need me, and my business needs me as well. But if I don't have anything to give, anything to offer, if I'm depleted, everything else will fall apart. So I am very selfish with my time. There are days, especially Mondays for me, where I don't do anything for anybody and I go mind my business, whatever that is, whether it's Barnes and Noble, a spa day, I don't care. I'm off the clock. I'm not, I'll tell my kids, I'm off the clock. I'm not your mom right now. I'll tell my husband, I'm gonna holler at you later because I need to go do my thing. And everybody accepts it because I've made it normal. I've made it routine almost for them to know, okay, mom's doing her thing right now. We're gonna go and talk to my stepdad about dinner. Or my husband would be like, let me make sure these kids don't bother her because she's already expressed to me she's not in the mood. I make it very clear today is about me. And I don't feel guilty about that because I've seen what it looks like when I've done the opposite. That was my first marriage. Completely lost my identity, doing everything for everybody else, but usually the person that gives the most gets forgotten. And I refuse to allow myself to get forgotten, especially from me. So that I tell women all the time, they're like, is it okay to be selfish? Yes, be selfish with your time, your money, with yourself. We know we run the show as women, and I'm sure your wife can attest to this too. We run everything. So sometimes we need a moment. And in those moments, our minds don't need to be about guilt or kids. It needs to be about what makes us happy outside of the titles of wife and mom, because we're more than that. We're women first. So as a woman, you have to think about what makes me happy. What do I like to do? For me, I like to go to spas. I like getting pampered. I like getting massages. I like reading. I like disappearing for a couple hours. Whatever that is to a woman, she should do the very same thing. I don't care what her title is at work or whatever the case might be. Figure out outside of the titles what you like and be selfish with that time that you give yourself.
Usually, the one that gives the most gets forgotten.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about this.
This is what I learned in my first marriage. Despite me recognizing the areas that I did not do the best, I paid attention to the areas that I know I did amazing. And I was a really good wife. I was a really involved mom and stepmom, and I was completely neglected. I don't think anyone, of course, kids don't notice, but my partner at the time didn't even notice whatever sacrifices it was that I was making with my time to help him with his business, to help him with his problems and things. I was last, but I was still expected to be available when the kids wanted me or when my husband wanted me, or to cook and to clean and to find time to do what it is that I say I'm going to do for myself. I was completely forgotten and neglected. And I went from being that person who bought the house at 21 and was in this career and did all these things to not being able to recognize who I was. I was like stuck at home all the time. And I worked around everyone's schedule instead of them working around mine. I lost complete control over Adrianna and I gained weight. I didn't even realize it until the divorce. And immediately after the divorce, I lost it all. But I looked back and saw videos and pictures, and I was like, I don't even know who this person is. I will never let that happen to me again because my heart was in a good place. My intentions were pure, but I didn't have a backbone. I didn't. I just did what I thought I was supposed to do and I didn't complain about it. But that was the problem. I was silent and suffering.
So, if someone's listening to this and they are feeling the same way, that I'm neglected, I'm unnoticed, what would you say they should do other than not being silent and vocalizing themselves?
Funny enough, I would just tell them to start screaming the word. Oh, they're like, whoa, so you're not hungry? I would tell them that built up feeling that you have, it's suppression of what you think and how you really feel. I would tell them to start being honest with themselves. Start being vocal. Like, again, journaling, writing down, why am I not, who am I trying to protect? Because clearly I'm not trying to protect myself, but who am I trying to protect by being silent? Why am I being silent? What does being silent do for me? And why do I have a problem putting myself first? I have a lot of women who deal with mom guilt a lot. And I talk to them all the time and I tell them, you're absolutely okay for feeling a way that you about you not being able to give certain things to your kids. But what's not okay is forgetting that at some point your kids leave. And who are you left with? Yourself. A lot of the women that coach are empty nesters, trying to figure out what they like and what they don't like because they've been silent and they've just done everything for their kids. And honestly, their kids end up not respecting them because they weren't what it looks like to respect mom. So I would tell them, you have to have people respect you even when you're silent. But silence can be loud. We want your silence to be loud, but we don't want your silence to be you just dwindling away. You're able to say a lot when you don't say anything, but you have to set a tone or a standard with people who are coming into your life, and they shouldn't be able to think that you're just going to either say okay or say nothing. It has to get to a point where you're known for someone who speaks up for themselves. Because if you can do it in one area, it will be enough practice for you to start doing it across the board. Even if when a waitress or waiter comes to your table and they ask you, how do you like your food? And you say it's good. Don't lie. Say, honestly, I actually don't like this. And if they say, oh, okay, do you want me to give you something else? Be honest. Either say yes or no, but you don't have to please anyone. It's literally as simple as that. And it took me a while to realize that, but it's as simple as those little, and even when it comes to going to the grocery store and they're like, do you want me to help you bag your stuff? And you say no. Say yes. Why saying no? Just open your mouth, because how you feel when you suppress it and when you don't say anything, it's not worth it eating you up like that.
Most people are living a life of quiet desperation
Mm-hmm.
where they're not in control of their emotions. Sometimes they're not even in control of their physical body because they're needed by everybody around them. And almost always, time passes by. You wake up one day and you ask the question, how did I get here? But while that is the truth about many lives, there are very few people who have the strength and the courage and the resilience to be able to bounce back from that. You, Adriana, have not only metamorphosized yourself over and over, despite things that have happened in your life. Today, you're taking all those lessons and using that to help countless women all across the world. You didn't have to do that. You could have just, quote, fixed your life and moved on. But the fact that you're taking these lessons and sharing it with others just goes to show type of person you are and the type of heart you carry within that body. Thank you so much for being on the show. Any last words for our audience members?
Yes, I want whoever is listening, man or woman, to understand that you are so much more than your title. And I hope if you haven't figured out who that person is, that you take the rest of this year to dive into that so that you can truly start living an amazing, fulfilled life.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.